advisor? What has this profession taught you?
Yeah. The value of privately held business. Not necessarily just for me and my career, right?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, the value that privately held business brings to our economy, and unfortunately, privately held business is kind of being attacked. So it's not as respected as it used to be,
Yeah.
which is really sad to me because we are nothing without privately held business, right?
Yeah.
They turn the wheels of industry,
Yeah.
and that's where the wealth is.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider, hanging out with one of my favorite people and one of, I would say, Team EPI's favorite people, Julie Keys. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Great to be back.
We have had various, a variety of faculty members in town throughout the last couple of weeks recording the next version of our credentialing program, SEPA 4.0. So for 1.0, and you've been around for all 4 versions in some capacity, right?
Yeah.
Because we've had the in-person model, right?
Mm-hmm.
That obviously changed during our pandemic. We had 2.0 then, which was what we used to call our master class, right? The first ever virtual program that we offered. Then we had a kind of a post-pandemic program, and now we've expanded faculty and brought in some of the original faculty into this 4.0 program, which I'm really excited about because I think that not only does it incorporate a variety of faculty members now, but we've just learned so much about virtual learning over the last 4 years. But nevertheless, we've had a fun couple of days. I took Julie and some of the people from Team EPI over to one of my favorite places, the islands of the Lake Erie Islands.
It was awesome.
And we had some fun, right? It's always one of those like hidden gems, I say. That,
oh my gosh, yeah.
That you don't know that you're sitting actually in Northeast Ohio.
I so want to come back.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
There's a variety of stuff that I could talk to Julie about. If you know Julie, she's an author. We have her Poised for Exit book. She's an award-winning certified exit planning advisor, faculty member, and both a business owner and an advisor as well. So she also has her own podcast that I would recommend everybody checking out as well. I think, what was that, a few months ago? Is it already that was like the beginning of the year?
I can't believe
right?
it. Time just
Where
flies.
we were in, that was probably last year at the Twin Cities Owners Forum.
Oh, when
right?
you were on the show?
Yeah, when I was on the show.
Yeah, I guess that was.
Right? Yeah,
oh my
that was a
gosh,
while
that was
ago.
almost a year ago.
Isn't that wild?
Wow.
So I think time flies. But
It's
since she
crazy.
was in town, I said, look, we got to get Julie on the show so that we can kind of unpack a bunch of different stuff. So really what I wanted to start with is you as an advisor and a business owner yourself. And I think there's been a lot of change. We just celebrated, right, the 10 years of the State of Owner Readiness Survey with the 2023 national research coming out. You became a SEPA almost 10 years. I think it'll be in your 10th anniversary next year. But you've kind of been in this space in some capacity for probably nearly 20 years, maybe even.
Not quite. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur longer than that.
Yeah,
but,
right? Yeah.
But a consultant, probably 15 years.
15 years? So I think you've seen a lot of change and a lot of evolution. When I have more kind of veteran certified exit planning advisors come on, I think even our profession has evolved quite a bit in a short 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
So what is top of mind for you now, looking back? There's quite literally thousands of advisors like you becoming certified exit planning advisors each year. Back when you became a SEPA in 2015, there was maybe a graduating class of 80 total, right, in a year between 2 classes. So I think a lot of change and a lot of evolution. So what's on your mind now that you're kind of looking back over your 10 years of being a SEPA, and what has gone on in our profession?
Well, I always look at, limited resources, like where do we want to try to save, right? And top of mind for me is always time.
Yeah.
I always, because you can't ever get it back, right? Time is just so valuable. And I look back on how time-consuming things used to be compared to now. So technology has been a huge game changer, I think. You've got so many more options for exit planning software now and valuation software and, different, applications and things like that you can use, like Calendly. I mean, they seem like small things.
Right,
but
yeah.
they're huge. They're huge.
I mean,
right?
yeah, I think
And
it
those things
streamlines
were
a bunch of stuff for sure, without doubt.
Yeah, they were not around. And so that has been huge for me when I look back. It's like technology has been a game changer for me. And then way more women advisors now than there were then.
Absolutely, I think you're spot on. I think it's noticeable since we all obviously the only time of year that we all come together is the Exit Planning Summit nowadays, other than maybe our chapter meetings that we see in our local communities. But from a national basis, the Exit Planning Summit that has grown from like when you started first coming to your summits was maybe 10%. We had like 28% women this past year. It was pretty cool. And now we have the Women in Exit Planning Symposium. That's a part of the summit. So that's spot on. That's certainly an observation.
Yeah, definitely. I think the third thing that came to mind for me that when I look back is there are specialties more than ever now, right? So advisors are specializing, professional advisors, attorneys, CPAs, wealth advisors are specializing, and we need to.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, even as a SEPA, I look at, okay, I'm a SEPA, that's kind of a specialty, right?
Right, it is,
I'm a value advisor, that's a specialty of that specialty. And then as a, you know, as a value advisor, I have a different process than another value advisor. Like my focus is way more on strategy and implementation. And another value advisor might focus more on, you know, a CFO channel, right?
You're absolutely right.
It's really where your strengths are and focusing on that. So you got to know what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Yeah, we're debuting our, we were talking about this, I think, on our trip yesterday. We're debuting this Beyond SEPA path, right? A way more deliberate and intentional way to integrate what somebody has learned as a certified exit planning advisor. We're starting to think of, to your point, the specialties within SEPA. So I would totally agree that usually people are something and a SEPA, right? Like you're a growth or a growth advisor and a SEPA. You're a financial planner and a SEPA.
Sure.
And what SEPA allows you to do, right, is obviously a bunch of things, but things that come to mind are connector and collaborator. You're able to look across all three legs of the stool, bring a team together. So SEPA is kind of a specialty within your advisor. But when you look at the SEPA community, we started presenting it in like a triangle form. At the base, you have your SEPAs that are like generalists, right? That they've become a SEPA to kind of utilize the language, have a different relationship with an owner, and then cross-collaborate. Then you have that one that's kind of a step above, which is a SEPA quarterback. These are, I think, for many of us, it's our financial advisors who are like relationship managing and project managing the entire value acceleration engagement or one of the two paths that a business owner is running on. And then folks like you that are a value advisor and even more specialized. And then to your point, you have like value advisors that are maybe more business improvement types, strategic and vision types. So I think it's also one of the confusing parts for business owners, though.
Yeah.
Is that as our stuff evolves, it's kind of hard to all take in.
Honestly, I think that it's confusing in any discipline for, I mean, I told a story yesterday when we were recording about a client of mine who decided that he was just going to use his corporate attorney to go through the agreement that he was going to sign with his investment banker. And the guy redlined the whole dang thing because he didn't know anything about M&A. Okay? He's a litigator.
Yeah, right.
Right. And so that's just making the point on they can kind of get confused sometimes about what specialties really are and are they necessary. But I think today specialty is more important than ever.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think one of the things I was just talking about, too, would be interesting to get your opinion on when it talks about a little bit of confusion, is we were just, I think, talking about this yesterday, too, is so if you take an operating system like EOS, right? EOS has been there's a bunch of EOS implementers there, and I think many kind of understand the concept of read Gino's book. But for EOS, there's a language that they use, similar to the language that we use as SEPA's value acceleration, but there was one point that you made that what's good and bad maybe. So I've always thought it was 100% good, and my mind is changing a little bit only because there's some confusion in the market. So when you go and use EOS and you go to any EOS implementer, they basically use the same language and it means the same thing. But one of the beauties of what we created, the value acceleration methodology, and that you mentioned, is that it can be kind of adopted and morphed into the way you like doing business, right? So it's like the foundation is the value acceleration methodology, and then you focus on strategy and vision. You use some of the methodology, maybe not all of it. Whereas like EOS will talk about being pure. And so what I think is sometimes confusing for the market, advisors and owners alike, is you have a certified exit planning advisor that has the baseline knowledge of the value acceleration methodology, but we're all implementing it in different ways. Like you can't do that in some of these other operating systems.
No, they don't allow you to.
So good and bad, right? Well, how do you feel about that? Kind of a random thought, but when you mention different advisors coming from different ways, it's kind of the beauty, because I don't know if it's a one-way fits all.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you do combat some confusion along the way.
Well, I think as far as the value acceleration methodology goes, much of that implementation is going to depend on your swim lane, right? So
Totally.
if you're more focused on the owner readiness side of exit planning versus the business readiness side, then you're going to focus more on that part of the implementation. But collaboration is still essential, like bringing in people that do things that you don't.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And as far as EOS goes, I think it's a great operating system.
Yeah.
I think that it's lacking on the strategic planning and growth and implementation part.
Yeah.
But yet you could plug it in to the prepare gate of the VAM.
I totally agree. I think that's where you see a lot of the implementers kind of pop in, right? Is helping us communicate value acceleration from the business side. So flipping that, talking a little bit about entrepreneurship, you've also been a kind of a career-long, lifelong entrepreneur. Didn't you say yesterday your father was an entrepreneur too, or is an entrepreneur, right? It's a financial advisory firm?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a great history of business ownership. So maybe taking the advisor cap off and putting the business owner cap on, what kind of lessons have you learned there over the years of being, maybe being both an entrepreneur and advisor? What is on top of in your opinion, what's on top of owners' minds today?
I think that what's on top of their minds is kind of largely dependent upon how prepared they are.
Yeah.
So the owners that
true.
I work with who are more prepared, and when I say prepared, that's kind of a general statement, but I think that our listeners understand when we say prepared, we're not just talking about prepared for an exit, right? We're talking about prepared for an opportunity, prepared for some kind of 5D that might occur, right? So having everything dialed in, well-oiled, ready for whatever's next for me, that kind of prepared.
Yeah.
And then I've got options, and then if something happens, I can pivot much more easily and effectively than if I have nothing in place.
Totally.
Versus the owner who's always got their head down, always working hard, and hard work is important, right? But they don't ever look up. And then when they realize that it's time to start doing things, they have so much catch up to do. There's a lot of anxiety that's involved in that. And so I think their thought process is a lot different because they got a lot of fires to put out. Versus the owner who has been listening to their advisors, taking the advice, doing the work. Yeah. Right?
No, I totally.
Two different ends of the spectrum for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally. And I smile because it's like a interesting journey that maybe we live because we're students of value acceleration and then teachers of it as well. But then we kind of live it ourselves in our own businesses, right?
Yes.
And so I smile because I've just kind of come through that where my day isn't necessarily putting out fires anymore. But I'm starting to decentralize myself away from the business with people that you know and love, like the people we hung up yesterday, right? John, Drew, Paige, Jocelyn, and really kind of promote and empower that next generation of leaders. One thing when I do think about being prepared, and I think about you, is you spend a lot of time with your family, right? We just got done with this huge family, 29 person or whatever it was, right down at the at your lake house. And I just think that the balance that you have has always been kind of inspirational, honestly, to see you kind of be able to be very successful in your career, but also be, I think blended or balanced in life. So how's personal planning have played into what you do today?
Well, that's a really good question. I abandoned the concept or notion of balance a long time ago.
This is a common thing.
It's a fallacy.
Yeah, I do. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Mine, I always say today, it's like a harmony, and it's seasonal for me, right? So it's like summertime for me is kind of like you, like getting outdoors, like into the lake house. I have the RV, so it's like the first quarter and the fourth quarter of my let's get to work, right?
Yeah.
And then my summertime, second, third quarter is let's have some fun and play and hang out. But nonetheless, please talk about your personal planning.
Well, I am a planner, as you know. From a professional standpoint, strategic planning has always been very important to me. So I'm not going to encourage my clients to do it if I'm not going to do it myself.
Right.
And part of my strategic plan also includes my personal planning and the things that I want for my life and for my family.
Yeah.
And so before they leave, I bring up, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
What are we doing next? What do we got on the calendar next?
Yeah, when you have them all together as a group.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, maybe they're walking out the
Yeah.
door at a different time, but I just want to make sure that they're clear and I'm clear about when we get to see each other next. Because if there's one thing I know, whether it's family or friends or whatever it is, when we say something like, something general, yeah, let's get together again soon. Right?
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
soon, a year goes by, 2 years go by, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's been so long. And so I've just learned that if that's going to happen, if we want to see each other soon, then let's figure out what's
Yeah,
next.
well, let's figure out what's next. So very
Yeah.
intentional. So is
Yeah.
that something new that you've done,
No,
or is
I-
that something
I
you've
pretty
always
much have
kind
done
of?
that. Well, ever since my kids have left the nest, which
Okay.
has been quite some time now. So, and so I, as the mom, need to have something to look forward to, right?
Sure.
But I also honor the fact that they're busy
Yeah.
and they have a schedule, and I'm not going to just fling something out there and go, hey, hope we can get together on Saturday, and here we are Friday afternoon, right?
Yeah, trying to figure it out. Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I like to plan it out there so that they know and it's on the calendar, and I don't send the calendar invite
Yeah.
until I got a nod from everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is your family lake house party the same time every year? I mentioned this because my mother has
I
a
know.
family lake
We
house
had the
party,
same
right?
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So hers. I'm trying to get her if she's listening, right? Mom does listen, so
Cool.
I'm trying to get her to keep the same like third weekend of July all
Yeah.
the time. But
Yeah.
last year was like the second weekend, right?
Sure.
But it is. I can see you like come to you like you
Mm-hmm.
have some brightness in you when you talk about this lake house party. Very similar to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Do you keep the same date, or do you try to organize the date, or does everybody know it's like the third week of July every year?
Everybody knows when it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I send out an invite, but I mean,
Yeah,
we're talking
yeah.
about a lot of people.
Yeah, like
right?
30
So-
people. Yeah.
Almost
Yeah.
29.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, my husband has 4 children. I have 4 children.
Right.
They all have a spouse or
Yeah.
a significant other. And we have 11 grandkids so far. Wow. So, yeah, it's a convention practically.
it is a
Just
convention,
like
yeah.
yours.
Yeah.
And so I know that they're busy. They travel. They have sports with their kids. They got yada, yada, right? Other things that they do. A lot of them travel a lot. And so, yeah, we just keep it consistent. It's almost like when I'm scheduling meetings with my clients,
Yeah.
they have to be predictable, recurring. Otherwise, they don't happen. And there's
Yeah.
no way I can fit them in if I don't have them on the same day of the week, time of day.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No,
Because
I
then
totally get it.
you know
Yeah.
where your white space is, and you know where
course.
you can plug in something else,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I learned that just came to mind for me too, when I was prepping for our show, I learned something new every time I like pick up your book again, or pop through your website. You have like a list of core values on your website, and I just thought that was unique because I don't know. I think core values as people that advise owners are like crucial to critical to success. But I don't know if I see them enough on like advisors' websites, right? So I go to your website and there's either these are Julie's core values. Does that play into your personal planning too? Those are
Yeah.
both business and personal for you, I would assume, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You live them throughout life.
Yeah, I live them throughout life, and I actually, I can't remember who I talked to about this recently because they asked me, well, should you have core values for your business that are different from your personal life? I'm like, why would you want to live 2 lives?
Right. Totally. Totally.
Larger corporation maybe would be more business,
Business focused,
right, in their values, which makes sense. But yet, some of that should still be able to transfer into your personal life, right?
I totally agree.
And so, and I think that a core value should be more of an action statement than just a noun or adjective, right?
Yeah.
So something
Yeah.
that you not only aspire to be better at, but that you actually do in your life.
Yeah.
Like this is what I do, this is what I believe.
So I totally agree. When we rewrote our core values during COVID, right? We quite literally, I tell this story a lot on this show, where we quite literally took the plaque off the wall,
Yeah.
and rewrote and kind of redesigned rediscovered who we were.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us on our leadership team back then, we also pulled from our personal lives too. And I found that by writing core values that are certainly a part of you, whether you as a business person or you as a mother or father or you as a friend, you as a person live them regardless of what situation you're in. It actually helps you hire people better. Because the people
All
that
day.
we bring into EPI now, we're nearly at 40 employees, if you can imagine.
All day.
I think a lot of them share those core values naturally in life. So we
Yeah.
attract the right person. And so I think it would be set aside the big corporations, but I might challenge, right? Like a huge corporation, if people are living these core values inside and outside of that building,
yes,
it just creates a better culture.
it is a game changer.
It is.
It
really
is. So recently I had one of the owners of an ESOP company on my podcast, and we weren't talking so much about the ESOP this time because he was on the show before.
Yeah.
But I just admire the guy. And he talked about how essential core values are for their business, so much so that they do not choose any directors of the board or any advisors if they don't have a core values match. That's a number one criteria.
Yeah.
And it's been like explosive growth for them.
You know, we've incorporated our core values like into the interview process too. It's something that we talk
Yeah.
about like right out of the gate.
Well, it's how we make our decisions.
Yeah,
If
it is.
if we've articulated them, if we believe
is.
them, and if this is how we live, then our decisions are made by those, and then that makes the decision so much more sound.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
We don't go back and go, "Oh, dang it, why did I do that?"
Yeah.
I mean, not that we
Totally.
never make
Yeah,
mistakes,
right.
but
Not that you
know,
never
we
do, but-
eliminate a few more. I
So,
think.
totally. So I got to take a quick break, but when we
Yeah.
come back, I want to dive into a couple of things that over the past couple of days we've talked about. I want to talk a lot about next generation.
Yeah.
So I actually go out to mentors and people that I'm close with, like Julie, and ask for ideas about summit content. And me and you were really aligned. I was hoping that somebody would tell me they wanted to talk about generations, because if you looked at our market, it's changing. And if
Yep.
you looked at the State of Owner Readiness Survey, it would definitely say
Yeah.
that it's changing. So I think we're up for an interesting 10 years. So we'll talk about that next. Stick with us.
Hey there, business owners. Are you ready for a game-changing opportunity? Introducing the 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report. Over the past decade, this groundbreaking research has reshaped how we view business ownership and exit planning. This report isn't just another study, it's a deep dive into the evolution of business ownership. It shines a spotlight on the crucial intersection of business attractiveness and owner readiness, revealing the undeniable impact of preparation on achieving successful transitions. With younger generations taking the reins, exit planning is taking on a whole new perspective. Education and awareness about preparing for the future have never been more crucial. And with financial readiness leading the charge, there's a clear opportunity for growth and learning. But here's the kicker. The report shows a surge in exit planning education and understanding, yet many still lack formal transition teams, highlighting the essential role of comprehensive support. So who's got your back? Trusted advisors have evolved from CPAs to financial advisors, making a decade of significant change in support networks. Ready to take the next step towards a successful exit? Dive into the Exit Planning Institute's 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report and start shaping your legacy today. The future is knocking. Are you ready to answer? Discover your readiness level at 2023ownerreadiness.com and take the first step towards a successful and significant exit.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast, hanging out with Julie Keys. So one of the things I said right before the break that she sent back to me was understanding generations, behaviors, mindsets, and all of that. I think it's more critical than ever before in our exit planning space, given the market change. So 10 years ago when you became a SEPA, we talked about 60% of the upmarket, the privately held companies in America being owned by baby boomers. That's down to 51%. And then that next generation of owners, a little bit of the older millennials, and then certainly through Gen X, so people in their 40s and 50s, are 43% of the market now.
Yeah.
And I think it's wildly interesting studying generations, and I would think for an advisor in the field like you would have to be approaching different generations, different age groups with different, maybe not a different message, but a different approach. So I
Right.
just think naturally we're just different, like a 30-year-old versus a 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old. So talk to me about your feelings on generations and how we kind of surround that as a professional advisor to owners.
Definitely. What comes to mind right away is just thinking about how we kind of have a listening for boomers.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be careful with that because we can't like put them in a box.
Yeah.
Right. But boomers many times tend to be DIYers, tend to not want to spend money on professional advice.
Yeah.
Not all of them, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them have come around.
Sure.
But that is more of a tendency, but it's not all of them, right? Conversely, Gen Xers will hire advisors,
Yeah.
but they also do research, right? They also will weigh like, what are my options? What can I do myself? What do I need help with? So they're not afraid to hire advisors, but they're also maybe a little bit more savvy in terms of technology, and they're not interested in working until they're 75.
No, I don't think so.
No.
I think they have this natural, so if you looked at them, right, that Gen X have this like natural yearning, if you will, for time, right? They want, they value their time. And so they're always trying to kind of blend, balance, and put into harmony what they're doing, for sure. I totally agree with that.
Right. And I think if you took the two, like you took a baby boomer and you took a Gen Xer, which one would be on their deathbed and say, I wish I would have spent more time at the office? Probably neither, right? Because no one would ever want to say
true,
that.
That's
However, which one would say, I wish I would have spent more time with my family? Probably the boomer.
Power of the boomer, sure. Yeah, that is fair.
Yeah.
So I think that, I do. That's actually a really good point.
Well, when we talk about next act planning and life planning, they have the hardest time envisioning what life could be like without their business.
Right. But yet they want to spend more time with their family.
They want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they just know how to get away from their company.
Yeah. They got to give themselves permission.
Yeah, that's true, right? Because I would say that if you looked at the boomer, that one of their core values is success. So I think this is why they're very career oriented, right? This is why they're very tied into their business, is that they want to feel that, they have a natural inclination to want to feel success into what they do.
There's a lot of drive and motivation.
Exactly. Yeah. So moving away from that is tough. I would say too that I like that you brought up they do their, like, Gen Xers do their research, because I do think that they're a little bit more educated, but maybe a couple of reasons. One, they, I think, have more exposure to exit planning now over that 10 years, right? So over that 10-year run, podcasts, books like yours, podcasts like yours, white papers, chapter networks, more SEPAs. I think, it's just more and more and more. We used to say, like, you could Google exit planning like 15 years ago, and there was like 100,000 results, and now there's like 1 billion. It's crazy. So it's all around them, right? They've kind of. I always say that my book one day is going to be like growing up through value acceleration.
Exactly.
Because as an owner, I've always surrounded myself, at least for like 12 years that I've been here at EPI. It's kind of cool because I've surrounded myself with folks like you, that are educators, collaborators, advisors to business owners, without a doubt. So I think that I do find that this hurdle that we used to have 10 years ago when you became a SEPA is not as high anymore, because the next generation of owners are a lot more educated and willing to talk to advisors. You feel like that's fair as somebody in the field?
I do. And I think that a lot of that has to do with technology too, because boomers did not grow up with technology. So they've had to adapt to using technology, which can be a little bit intimidating. But if you've grown up with it, you're not afraid of it.
That's fair. Yeah,
so
that is
there's
fair.
a difference there too, especially the younger generations are even more so, right? I mean, I'm calling the help desk all the time with my 25-year-old.
Yeah, no, I totally. So I think it's going to be an interesting 10-year run. Maybe three things for those, particularly those Gen Xers. One, more educated, more willing to hire advisors. So I think that's fun for us as an advisory community. Two, I think they're naturally inclined to look and value time. So they're always trying to get away from their business so they can blend and balance and put into harmony their life. So I think that's very natural. And then the last thing is, you said they're not going to own a business till 75. I think they might be like involved in business, but they're not going to have the same business that they started or bought when they were 40 that they have when they're 70, right? They're these, I call them the boomerang exits.
They'll have investments.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Those investments are part, right, of who they are, the entrepreneurial investments, but they won't be the operators.
It's honestly part of my personal plan, my personal vision too, is that's spot on. I haven't thought about it like that, but naturally maybe I have, because when I rewrote my 10-year personal vision, where I wanted to go, I think one of the really cool things that I would love to do is invest in like some of the people here at EPI that are very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Like I envision when this run is over, that a lot of the leadership team here in particular would go buy or start their own businesses, and I'd love to be invested, not operating something like Paige's marketing agency, right? Like I don't know if I want to run it day to day, but I would certainly like to provide, some oversight, some mentorship, and be invested in it. That's a good way to think about it, I think, too.
I love that idea.
So the other kind of evolution when I think of generations, and something that we've recently talked about, is accounting firms, banks, financial advisory firms. and how they're not looking at their client almost holistically, right? Is that the partners at these firms, I think, are very, they're tied to that relationship, but the person that's doing the taxes for the owner isn't saying, oh, let's go over to the wealth management side of this firm or the investment banking side. And and this is something that throughout particularly this recording week with our faculty members that we've talked to quite a bit. I think there's another, I don't know how far along it is, but I think there's another evolution of professional advisory coming, because I think they're missing, we just talked about it on the ride to the studio here, that I think larger advisory firms like an accounting firm are missing opportunity because they don't cross-collaborate or communicate. No. Right? Is that fair to say?
Very fair to say.
Yeah, right? I just think it's kind of weird. Like, I think what you said in the car the other day is that when in talking to different firms out there, they didn't realize owners were actually selling their businesses. Like, oh man, I just I transitioned a client or lost a client. I didn't know that they were even for sale.
Well, if they only see them once a year to do their taxes, how would they know?
Yeah, I guess they wouldn't.
If they're not asking the right questions. I mean, it's really kind of a sad situation, and I've seen it so many times with. Not with huge, national accounting firms as much. Well, of course, they actually probably have the same problem, right? Yeah. But the mid-sized firms that offer a lot of different services aside from just audit and tax, if their business model is such that the advisors, the CPAs, the associates, the partners have their own book of business, right? They originate their own book of business and they kind of possess that, right? Then they seem to be less internally collaborative than those who actually work as a team.
Exactly.
Which is not very common.
Well, why is that, though,
I don't
right?
know, okay? And honestly, CPAs, we love you, okay? We love you. We need you.
Well, you need you. You're one of the core team.
But you got to think outside the box. And if you can't do that, like if it's not your skill set, hire a team to come in and help you to recreate your business model and the way that you implement and operate your business, right? As a collaborative team internally so that you can cross-sell. The ROI on making an investment like that would come back just like that. Why? Because there's so many different services that never get sold.
I totally agree.
The client walks out the door and it's like, man, probably could have offered valuation service, probably could have done an ESOP consult, probably could have done an audit. I mean, whatever it is, right? So, and I'm passionate about that because I see it so much, right? And it's not just the firm misses out, the client misses out.
I mean, I totally agree too. And with the CPA being one of the top 3 most trusted advisors, you almost have like a obligation, I feel, to kind of and it's all in the family, right? So it's like, I'm the owner, and think about all the stuff I need, and think about the accounting firm of today. They also have fractional CFO services. A lot of them have a wealth management arm, right? A lot of them have business advisory.
I mean,
exactly.
All the things.
So why don't we, I don't know, I think it's another, when I talk about generations and evolution, I think there's an evolution of the way larger firms like that think.
They have to.
Because I just don't know how they, I just don't know how they continue to operate that way. Mm-hmm. And not be able to shift the owner around to different segments of their own firm.
I think too that a lot of the larger financial planning and wealth advisory firms have the same issue because many of these advisors are kind of in their own little bubble, right? I specialize in 401k, or I specialize in insurance, or I specialize in asset management, whatever it is, or planning, right? You got all these people, but are we actually working together? Like we were talking about how they may have their own investment banking arm.
Exactly right. Yeah.
But do they work together?
Well, I'm saying, if they're associated and have their own investment banking arm in a wealth management firm, it's got to be maybe it's not a no-brainer, but for me, it's a no-brainer because the investment banking are harvesting the value and then hopefully giving it back to the wealth management side of the business. Yeah. Right? And the wealth management side of the business say, hey, I have this client that's potentially coming for sale. Let me move you over to the investment banking side to at least have a conversation.
There's always a cross-selling opportunity in an exit plan.
I think there is, right? It's it's quite literally like a slide, I think, or a page in my dad's book that just says,
here you go.
If we collaborate, which I want to talk to you about with you next, right? If we collaborate and communicate, there's a whole wide variety of services that owners likely need. So If you know Julie well, and a lot of us do that listen to the show, you are known as the collaborator, right? I think a title that we probably gave you back in your first power session or something like that.
Yeah.
Where a funny side story for the audience, when our power sessions at the Exit Planning Summit are like TED Talks, right? These 15 to 18 minute sessions where we try to give you the most impactful, powerful message and a wide variety of topics. And so this is probably like the kid in me, right? I was like the WWE, like the wrestling mentality where it's like the Ultimate Warrior. Everybody has a name, right? So rather than just calling you Julie, we said Julie's the collaborator.
Yeah.
But a title that I think obviously fits you well even today, because you are, when I think about you in particular, I think about somebody that's collaborative and community based. And so for our listeners in there, whether an owner or advisor, in kind of this conversation about integrating services, how do we become more collaborative? What comes to mind for you?
Well, I think we just live in a collaborative economy, right?
Yeah, it's like naturally who we are today, or should be.
Well, we should be. We're missing opportunities if we're not. That's the way I look at it, right? It isn't just about giving. It's about like, okay, what are we missing here and how are we incomplete?
Yeah.
And if we're not collaborating, if we're not building a strong network that's based on our core values, right? I want to work with like-minded advisors.
Absolutely.
Right? Not just business wanting to do business with somebody else, but that's the why.
Yeah.
If you think back to like the Simon Sinek video on, that's why we buy.
That's exactly true.
Yeah. And so the strong network isn't just like a nice thing to have. It's your net worth.
I agree, especially in today's the way we do business today.
Yeah.
It is. It's a big deal.
And we can't have all the answers. Like I said before, I think that specialty is even more prevalent now than it ever has been. I mean, just look at, we could follow the lead of lawyers. Years ago, there were so many people that were in general practice. Now there's almost none.
Specialties, yeah.
Now you kind of run away from them.
Yeah.
Right? It's like general practice. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, small town, rural town, you're probably going to see that more.
Yeah.
Right? But, with the society we live in, we have to have those specialties, I think. And, like for me as an advisor with business owners in some categories that seem to be more prevalent for some reason, I don't know why, but I work with a lot of companies in construction and a lot of companies in manufacturing. I understand processes very well in some of these industries because I've had so many clients in them.
Yeah, totally.
And so I know the speak.
Yeah.
Business owners like that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You ask poignant questions about specific things that you know about their industry, and they look at you like, how did you know that?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because you have a specialization inside
and they
of
like
that. I think
right?
they do. Well, it's a connecting. I think it's a connecting point. If you looked at the owners at the 2023 or 2024 Exit Planning Summit, I had them on stage and I said, like, what do you look for in an advisor? And one of them, or again, I think all of them had a similar comment that was, I want the advisor to get to know me.
Yeah.
And I think by doing that in the sense of community and collaboration is that if you get to know them, you get to know their needs. And even though that might not be something you specialize in, if you're a good collaborator, you know somebody that can do that. So say they have a human resource kind of problem, or they have a vision and strategy problem, or they have a systems problem. There's people that you can call up inside of your community if you have that community and that collaborative mentality.
That's just it.
And now think about how much more valuable you are. So you might be their financial advisor, but then you heard them in a conversation talk about attracting great talent and how they might be struggling with that. And you found a fellow SEPA that specializes in that area. How much more valuable you become now as their financial advisor. You're never going to forget that as an owner.
That is the true value of collaboration.
Exactly.
It really is. It isn't just about having fun and building a nice network. And isn't it great that I have 3,000 connections on LinkedIn, right? That isn't the point. The point is that we actually utilize them. We know some people that can make a significant impact in our clients' lives. And what does that do for us then foundationally? It makes us a trusted advisor.
Exactly. And
we're
maybe
doing
the most
what
valuable.
We're supposed to do.
Exactly right. And maybe one of the most valuable advisors that they have, because you're not just doing what your expertise is, but you're bringing people in to help them all push to a better place. So I have one more question to ask you as when we get back from the break. I want to talk about, as an award-winning and kind of decorated SEPA, if you will, what have you learned? What has this profession taught you? So we'll get to that answer next. Just give us a quick break. Thanks.
Are you a business owner seeking to unlock the true potential of your enterprise? Look no further than the second edition of Christopher Snider's revolutionary book, Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. In this updated edition, Snider presents proven strategies for maximizing your company's value and accelerating growth. Whether you're aiming to sell or simply want to ensure long-term success, this book offers a blueprint for building a thriving, self-sustaining business. Walking to Destiny isn't just another book, it's a game changer, backed by Snider's own experience as a successful business owner and as a CPA. This book bridges the gap between business owners and advisors, guiding you towards financial freedom. But don't just take our word for it. Hear from those whose lives have been transformed by its insights. One satisfied reader raves, "The best guide for transitioning out of privately owned companies. I recommend it to all business owners and advisors." Another praises it on its focus for maximizing business value, calling it their, quote, principal tool for educating owners. Ready to take control of your business's destiny? Visit walkingtodestiny.com now and use code EXITISNOW to claim your free copy of Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the moment perfect by seizing this opportunity today.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Exit is Now podcast. So I wanted to ask Julie one final question before we part for today's episode, today's show. You know, as I looked, when I look at Julie, right, I think I said before the break, kind of a very decorated professional advisor and a very decorated CPA award winner, faculty member, author, podcaster. And so I think having her here on the show, and for many listeners that are also fellow certified exit planning advisors, I think the question I wanted to ask was, you know, over the last 10 years of being a certified exit planning advisor, what has this profession taught you?
Yeah. I think the value of privately held business, not necessarily just for me and my career, right?
Yeah, sure.
I mean the value that privately held business brings to the United States of America, for one, because they employ the vast majority of people. The value that privately held business brings to our economy, and unfortunately, privately held business is kind of being attacked. So it's not as respected as it used to be, which is really sad to me because we are nothing without privately held business, right? Yeah. They turn the wheels of industry. Yeah. And that's where the wealth is. So, you know, you think about financial advisors and you know, wanting to work with more business owners, which is why they're becoming CPAs, makes total sense to me.
Exactly.
Because that's where the wealth is, generally speaking. Yeah. And so we got to take care of those people.
Well, I think so. I mean, I think that's great advice. It reminds me, you know, back in January when I did that Senate testimony, you know, at the U.S. Senate, and what I always, when working in government, I always think they concentrate on like two spectrums. They invest a lot in helping startup companies, right? These like very maybe even techie startup and helping them fund that. And then they focus on the big guys, right? The big, perhaps more public companies that employ thousands of people. But there's this huge segment in the middle that you're referring to right now that are these privately held companies that employ 10 people, 40 people, 100 people, 300 people, and that still today, even though better than 10 years ago, struggle with what's next in that transition. So yeah, I think absolutely. I think across the board, whether it's our business owners themselves, the organizations that support them, the government, the advisors, I think we could all put more effort into focusing in and helping the small or lower middle market business owner effectively and successfully transition.
Yeah. So not just because it's a nice thing to do, because it's like needed. Right? It's necessary. Yeah, we need them, right? Yeah, for sure.
Well, Julie, thanks for hanging out on the show, and hopefully we'll have you back. We'll have you back soon. So cool. And maybe we should do what you do with your family is to actually put a date on the calendar to hang out next. It's always enjoyable hanging out. And so for our listeners, subscribe, listen, and leave a review on all of your podcast platforms. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.